Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 2 for this news report today. It's Monday, November 19th, 2012. I'm Darko, and this is my website, ggnonline.com, on YouTube, ddarko2012 and ddarko2013 on my YouTube channels. I'd like to just thank publicly those people that supported me recently with some donations. This is going to be the only video probably this week because Thanksgiving. I'm going to be traveling, and your donations will help me get to see my family and stuff like that. It's a decent trip, so I appreciate it very much. I have a poll up here. What issue is important to you right now? It's kind of surprising, but it's a good surprise. The majority are saying spirituality, 52%, followed by 36% of the economy. This last one was kind of a joke, the general Petraeus. It was actually kind of worrying at first because it was getting a lot of votes. But it's at 23%, followed by politics at 28%. So. All right, so I'm ready to continue where I left off. The United States is blocking a United Nations statement on Gaza, says Russia. Russia has accused the United States of trying to filibuster a UN Security Council statement on the conflict between Israel and Gaza. Also, 500 Egyptian activists enter Gaza with medical supplies. Unlike past Israeli attacks, Gaza blockade no longer complete. Though the Egyptian government's change in policy towards Israel's attack on the Gaza Strip has mostly been rhetorical. It says here the obligation of an elected government to avoid angering its own population too much has made a meaningful change on the ground. So see, that's what I was talking about. This puppet, Morzai, who is a Western proxy under the guise of what Muslim Brotherhood, being a nice, good, pious Muslim, is really a globalist, and he's just doing whatever they tell him to do. But in order to do that and play that illusion off, he has to allow certain things like this happen because the people don't like Israel too much, and he has to sit there and act like he doesn't like him either. But he's going to keep accepting large amounts of cash coming from the United States and not attack Israel at all. So that's the reality of it. That's because while Egypt's government is mostly still just playing the role of facilitator for ceasefire negotiations, civilians are taking a more proactive role, with 500 of them marching to Gaza today with medical supplies for the tiny enclave's overwhelmed hospital. So that's pretty good news. Report says rockets fired from Egypt hit Israel. Two major Israeli newspapers are reporting that rockets fired from Egypt have hit Israel. So, who knows? Maybe this is some, quote, Bedouins or terrorists in the Sinai Peninsula. Or maybe it's just Israel firing rockets at itself, or maybe it's the rebels from Syria that are all along the borders firing rockets into Israel. Terrorists in the Sinai Peninsula launched rockets into Israel Friday night, says the Jerusalem Post. They fell near an Israeli village on the southern border, causing some damage but no injuries. Yeah, that's one of the tactics that these little proxy armies of mercenaries and Islamic extremists like to do. They like to fire. They like to go across the border, say like in Syria. And they'll go into Turkey. These rebels in Syria trying to take out Assad. They'll go across. They'll get arms and munitions, literally from the backs of pickup trucks, from basically being led by the Turkish government. Then they'll go back over the border. They'll fire mortar shells, because that's who usually uses these mortar shells are these rebels and mercenaries and terrorists, and they'll fire them back into Turkey, maybe damage some buildings, and maybe, just maybe, kill a few people, and then they'll say, oh, see, Assad's government, shells came in from Syria, so they like to do that game, and then they run back across the borders, recruit more people. Israel says rebels take Syrian frontier villages, so this is what I'm talking about. Syrian rebels have taken control of nearly all the villages near the frontier with Israel held Golan Heights, according to Israel's defense minister, who said Assad's forces were displaying ever-diminishing efficiency, which is what the whole point of all this is. Israeli troops fire into Syria and kill 3 soldiers. Officials are unclear if rebels or regime gunfire prompted the attack, but it goes on and says there's more casualties reported at the Israeli frontier with Syria after soldiers in the occupied Golan Heights fired into Syria today, killing 3 soldiers. It was a response to small arms fire. Israel concedes that they're not really sure who it was, but it goes on, it says the slain people appear to have been Syrian regime forces. It's the 3rd border incident between Israel and Syria over the past few weeks after stray mortar shells exploded just across the border and Israel attacked Syrian artillery shells. Like I said before, a nice tactic that the Zionists like to use is the Syrian rebels have accused Israel of aiding the Assad regime, although this appears unlikely. Like I said, that basically helps create division among Assad's people and his supporters to think, oh, he's a Zionist. Oh, okay. Syrian rebels capture airports. So this is the stuff that's going on. It's not, I mean, yeah, it's in BBC and everything, but everything you see on the television, an average person, they're not going to be seeing this stuff, these advancements that these terrorists are taking in Syria. Syrian rebels capture airport. This is a big deal, Syrian rebels say they have captured an airport near the border with Iraq. The Syrian Observatory of Human Rights and Activist Network said the rebels now control large swaths of land. So these are the signs that the tide could be turning, right? Just like Libya, when they were taking military armories and they were taking airports and military bases. Syrian rebels siege major military base near Turkish border. Reports 15 tanks have been seized and several military officers captured. The rebel fighters have released video footage showing they have captured major military base just west of Aleppo, right there, along the border with neighboring Turkey. Yeah, it says the move adds another major possession to rebel holdings in the Syrian northwest, with border crossings almost constantly contested, with the hope of Western arms flowing in through Turkey. Goes on, it says the area on the Turkish frontier is the largest concentrations where the rebels have formed, with Turkey openly backing some factions. It says here, Syrian rebels eye Assad's economic lifeline in the east. A Syrian rebel offensive that captured the border crossings with Turkey and Iraq aims to cut off supplies from the country's main grain and oil-producing region. So, and speed Assad's downfall. Like I said, regime change, that's what it's about. I know most of my viewers are aware of that, but just in case you're a new viewer, you happen to stumble upon this, and you get most of your news from the television, it's not about humanitarianism at all. It's about business. Another call to arm the Syrian rebels after, the UK's Hague said that. And France and Europe and Turkey, they're all recognizing this new opposition government. Give us arms to defend ourselves, says this individual who is touring European capitals as a newly elected president of the Syrian coalition of opposition forces. So, yeah, you have the Islamic extremist rebel group rejecting new Syrian opposition coalition. The group of extremist factions in Syria have rejected the country's new opposition coalition, saying in a video statement that they have formed an Islamic State in the embattled city of Aleppo to underline that they want nothing to do with the Western-backed bloc. So that's pretty interesting. So I'm just going to put this out there, just going with, as far as Libya, now everybody's still going down that rabbit hole and just totally ignoring the obvious, which is, they should have just left Gaddafi in power. They should never intervene into a sovereign nation, which was more democratic than the United States, believe it or not, and many other Western countries. And the Gulf dictatorships, they're dictatorships, the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Bahrain, all them, those are the ones who are actually funding all of these Islamic extremists. And in fact, they're actually starting to worry about it and possibly cutting ties with these people because they're starting to have a lot of power after the Arab Spring, which of course was induced by Western democracies in the Gulf states to get regime changes. So now we're going to have the same situation here in Syria. So when an ambassador gets hung or gets killed or murdered or slain, and it's all over the news, and then you have all these people saying, well, if Romney was in office, this would have never happened, and then you'll have Obama supporters saying, well, you gotta, he's only had 4 years, you gotta give him more time, and you can just think back to Libya and say, well, we shouldn't have been there, right? And this would have never happened. So it's not more security that is the problem. It's that that you are bullying your way into another country's business. And remember this kind of went under the radar. From the 16th, I covered on Friday, Pentagon says 75,000 troops might be needed to seize Syria's chemical weapons. So they've actually already started to talk about this, how many troops they would need. British troops on Syria standby. More than 1,000 Royal Marines could be sent to Syria as the conflict's humanitarian toll reaches crisis levels. So there you go, humanitarian toll. That's, of course, using civilians as pawns. And the more they die, the more douchebags like this increase their business street cred. U.S. senators call for a no-fly zone in Syria. U.S. senators are calling for the West to establish a no-fly zone in Syria with a civil war. It's not a civil war, like I said. This is sectarian violence between different sects of Islam. Most Westerners don't have no clue about that. It also has to do with regime change. It's basically an invasion by a bunch of terrorists. They're backed by people like this, who use the word Al-Qaeda to scare people on Fox News as red alert, red alert, red alert, and people, you can see them mesmerized, right, by all this shock and awe media. Yeah, and John McCain, who I believe is like a millionaire, was just ashamed of the lack of response from the U.S. So, refugee children face winter risks. Yeah, this is 200,000, a quarter million Syrian refugee children are at serious risk from the freezing temperatures as the winter sets in the Middle East. So it's going to be bad for these guys. It's already been a lot of unrest in the Jordan camps there, and it's only going to get worse as the cold sets in. Food is scarce. And they keep escalating this, like those douchebags, like I just pointed out, Haig and McCain. Syrian rebels clash with Kurdish militias on border with Turkey. So Syrian rebels fighting to help the regime change clash with armed Kurds near the Turkish border on Monday. This could actually be pointing to why they are propping up Kurdistan right now, exploiting the unraveling of Assad's grip in swaths of Syria. Kurds have been asserting control in parts of the northeast, bidding for self-rule and rights. So they could actually be playing this, and just squeezing Syria from all angles. And like I said, then they'll take the Kurds and they'll give them their own state, and it'll be a puppet state. That mean I don't want to see Kurdistan and the Kurds have their own sovereign state? No, it just means that if they get their state, it's going to be a Zionist, Western, basically Gulf state-backed country. And that's one of the reasons, just one of the reasons why Turkey is, all up in this. Besides, it's a border state and it's a NATO state and it's vying for itself, EU. It's trying to get into the EU, basically. And so there's some articles I've covered where it says the majority of the buildup by Turkey near the Kurdish region, and that is not so much for Syria, but for the Kurds. The German Bundeswehr may monitor Turkish-Syrian border. I'm sorry if I butchered that. If German troops take part in reported Turkish air defense system, it would represent the unit's first foreign deployment, originally intended to protect against the Soviet threat. The group is based in northern Germany, so Germany's next foreign military deployment may not be far off. Turkey will reportedly request NATO's assistance in establishing an air defense system, and German units could be called on to participate. Move fast here, so stick with me, please. Iraqi troops and Kurdish forces on the verge of war. It says in response to large numbers of Iraqi troops in Kirkuk, Kurdish military officials have dispatched thousands of forces to the province. That's right, they want their own military. Remember, I covered that. Iraq Kurds put security forces on high alert, so now they're on high alert, attributing the move to clashes with the central government of Iraq. Then we have this, top economic advisors forecast world war, including this Kyle Bass, Faber, and Jim Rogers say trillions of debt will be restructured and millions of financially prudent savers will lose large percentage of their real purchasing power. Says the world will not end, but the social fabric of the nations will be stretched. In some cases, looking back through history, all too often war is a manifestation of simple economic entropy played to its logical conclusion. In other words, we believe that war is inevitable consequence of the current global economic situation, but it's not. It's because they create war so that they can take on more debt. That was found out by Ezra Pound and Eustace Mullins, who wrote about the Federal Reserve. So the whole thing, when you hear this crap by people on the television talk to you about, like Kramer, we need a war to get us out of this recession. Well, we're kind of in a depression, and the reason we get into them is because of debt. So we get into a war to take on more debt so that we can get rid of the old debt. Well, technically, the tax slave takes on the debt, but the businesses, the military-industrial complex, and the sold-out politicians who work for them actually win in the end, but you lose. Talking about World War, 5 EU countries call for a new military structure, so the EU wants its own military. When we were talking about that, Venezuela is going to start modernizing their fleet by purchasing Chinese goods. Kim Jong-un of North Korea is trying to get control of his military, while the arms race is exploding as neighbors try to counter Russia's power and rise. Obama was odd man out, trying to bully his way into Southeast China's economy. China's currency moves closer to the global reserve currency. Russia vows a tough response to U.S. legislation that will put sanctions on them if they find them responsible for violating human rights. It originated from the Soviet Union's treatment of Jews. The irony is that it was the Jewish Bolsheviks that murdered 66 million in Russia, mostly ethnic Russians and Christians. Thank you.